Thank you so much, Your Eminence Cardinal Turkson. Dear sisters and brothers in Christ, Your Eminences and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I come to you to bring greetings for this significant anniversary. I come to you from the World Council of Churches, a fellowship of 350 Orthodox and Protestant churches in the world. I come from Geneva, the city of peace. I come as a Norwegian Lutheran pastor, but I also come to you as a representative of the many churches and Christians belonging to our fellowship. Some of them I visited and talked to last week in Pyongyang in North Korea, visitors from South Korea in Geneva, church leaders from Syria, from the Holy Land of Israel and Palestine, the many who ask, what can we do together for the peace in our time? The name of John the 23rd will always be remembered in also our member churches, or the World Council of Churches, through his many initiatives, but also his groundbreaking encyclical, Pacem in Terris, a watershed in the public teaching of the Catholic Church, and with an influence far beyond the Roman Catholic Church. Emphasizing the recognition of human rights after decades and centuries of rejection, talking about the firm statement that states alone cannot ensure the common good without a social order that puts the person as its center. And also the unmistakable declaration that racial discrimination cannot be accepted. And this famous no to nuclear warfare that also calls into question the centuries-old notion of a just war. A new horizon opens with this encyclical for all Christians, but also for all people of goodwill, as we hear. And much was written after the encyclical. Much was done in the inspiration of the encyclical. To overcome colonial rule, to join the United Nations, to find a way out of how the world was on the brink of a nuclear war, inspiring the civil rights movement, changing the United States and giving new meaning to democracy. Surely the response are also something we have to bring to our knowledge today and also be part of our gratitude. But we see the many consequences of this Pacem in Terris also today. I hear the same voice of leadership when His Holiness Pope Francis called for a peaceful solution in Syria and condemns the proliferation of wars and conflicts some weeks ago. His call inspired many of us as we met in Geneva, a consultation I called church leaders from Syria, from Russia, United States, United Kingdom, France, and Germany to be with us and to discuss with Mr. Annan and Mr. Brahimi what can we as religious leaders do to promote a new vision for the people of Syria. And in our joint communiqué we said, churches worldwide have spoken out against the war in Syria, and we must continue to raise our voices in our congregations and with our governments. We must strengthen the public outcry so that those in power will protect the common interest of humanity. The World Council of Churches is very close now to our 10th assembly, starting at the end of this month in Busan, in the Republic of Korea. Both the theme of the assembly, God of life, lead us to justice and peace, and the immediate context of the divided Korean peninsula compel us to intensify our commitment to the reconciliation of deep divisions, to a world free of nuclear weapons, to peace. And in our reflections, we have worked a lot on the concept of just peace, preparing ourselves for this assembly. It is related to our theme and runs in the bloodstream of this assembly and in the Council's future work. It is a light built in our pursuit for peace with justice. The way of just peace is a pathway where more and more of the ecumenical family is invited to accept God's promise of peace and to set forth in faith and to walk together. So naturally, like Pacem in Terris, it pursues the common good. It invites people of different confessions, disciplines, and political persuasions to journey into God's purpose for humanity and for all creation. As the song of Seconda reminds us every morning, we trust that God will guide our feet into the way of peace. And in our rendering, the way of just peace has 4 reference points, rather like a compass. The journey of peace takes place in 4 contiguous spheres. Peace in the community, peace with the earth, peace in the marketplace, and peace among the peoples. The frame of reference here is peace building, constructive action, life-affirming discipline. It is the belief that as Christians engaged in public life, we are required to put many times more energy into building peace and preventing violence than into our discussions and eventually also our acceptance that conditions for a just war may have been met. Wherever possible, we must avoid the familiar trap of belated action and no good options when violent incidents or armed conflict have already broken out. But even more, we need the just peace idea, the concept, the vision to be built into all our work. Thus, we also call for a mandate of the UN Security Council, wider than today, to also focus on what is more than military questions when we talk about human security. We must have a political and a peaceful responsibility to protect in a much wider sense than we often think. So an awareness of the preventive nature of just peace is spreading among the World Council of Churches membership and far beyond. And the prevention, for example, needs reflections. What do we do now together with our people, our member churches in the Middle East? This was raised in discussions recently in Jordan, in Lebanon, and Syria. And we are asking, what are the peaceful ways forward? Not back to the old system, but forward to full citizenship and equality in traditional divided societies. What is the way forward towards a negotiated all-party settlement to the crisis in Syria? And towards a second Geneva conference on Syria, we are also ready to prepare our contribution and should be together in this. Preventive and peace-building activities will come into focus also in this assembly in Busan, as we also there will launch what we call an ecumenical pilgrimage of justice and peace. Such a pilgrimage will shape the public profile of the World Council of Churches in its coming years. We have differences on questions of justice and peace. Yet we are learning that our fellowship is a home for peacemakers, a movement uniting different peace traditions and a forum for different initiatives. The pilgrimage would embrace respect for life in various ways, in continuing concern for the protection of human rights, in economies of life which promote the common good, while safeguarding creation, in the responsibility to prevent violence, armed conflict and war, and in conflict transformation when peace building and prevention fail. Let me bring you one example from East Asia, the venue of our assembly. In some of the preparatory material from Korea, our sisters and brothers there reflect also of the last disaster of Fukushima. And I quote, "The Korean expression sang means a mutual caring for life. We strongly oppose all nuclear weapons and nuclear power generation because they are life-threatening. Nuclear energy also puts an unacceptable burden on our children, their children, and the planet. And they go further into a new experience of this tragedy, growing threat to peace on Earth and with the Earth. We have enjoyed the sweetness of plentiful energy through nuclear energy. Now we must learn the bitterness of closing nuclear reactors and dealing with radioactive waste, to liberate ourselves from the nuclear culture based on greed and consumerism. We urgently proclaim the need not for the security of the status quo of nuclear-armed states, but for the securing of life for all humanity and for creation. These are convictions that we find echo the message from Pacem in Terris. Christians are to understand peace and peacemaking as an indispensable part of our common faith. Peace constitutes a pattern of life that reflects human participation in God's love for the world. Therefore, public policies of the World Council of Churches provide evidence of a fundamental transformation that has taken place in the ecumenical position on war and peace, violence and non-violence, inspired also by what we celebrate today. This development has affected the traditional positions of both the advocates of just war theory and of Christian pacifists. Both have found themselves to be working allies time and again. All weapons of mass destruction violate both just war and pacifist criteria. Christian peacemakers have stood side by side in opposition to nuclear arms and worked together for nuclear disarmament. We have joined in anti-apartheid campaigns in South Africa and anti-regime campaigns in Eastern Europe. We have sought truth and reconciliation processes in Africa and elsewhere. And for the so-called war on terror, we have rejected the crusade tradition, whereby any just cause justifies all means necessary to achieve it. We have also listened to voices like the voice of the Ecumenical Patriarch in our Ecumenical Peace Convocation in Jamaica in 2011, where he pointed out the double dilemma but also dramatic situation we found ourselves in as humanity. First, never before has it been possible for one group of human beings to eradicate so many people simultaneously. Second, never before has humanity been in a position to destroy so much of the planet environmentally. Humankind is faced with radically new circumstances, which demand of us an equally radical commitment to peace. I take this opportunity to invite the Roman Catholic Church, the Pontifical Council, and you, sisters and brothers, ladies and gentlemen, to work with us and to find this way forward. What does it mean to be together on an ecumenical pilgrimage of justice and peace? Traveling around the world, I face many challenges, but most of them are not that big. But once as a Norwegian, only once as a Norwegian, I've experienced that a pass controller didn't really accept my diplomatic passport from Norway. Browsing through it again and again, finally asking me his question, "Man, why do you only go to the wrong places?" After telling him why I go to what he thinks is wrong places, telling him about our churches in these places and their struggle for justice and peace, he finally let me into the Washington, D.C. meeting I was there for. But I think our pilgrimage should be to the wrong places. And we know that they can be here as well as there. By its calling and vocation, the Christian Church is intended to be a congregation of peacemakers. And my reading of our dear ecumenical text from the Gospel of John, chapter 17, in the light of the mission of Christ and his legacy to the Church, I see that the churches together today are included in God's work for peace. And may we together become a more credible witness for peace in a world in need of justice and peace, and yet also graciously endowed with God's truth, justice, and love. This is the world which Pacem and Terris holds up so carefully for all of us to see. Thank you.